Hello, my dear students. Let's do a new topic today. So I thought, why not talk about the Reformation? एक्चुअली बच्चे जब भी हम वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री पढ़ना शुरू करते हैं सबसे बेसिक टॉपिक्स जो होते हैं दैट इज़ रिनेसा एंड रिफॉर्मेशन नाउ रिनेसा के ऊपर मैंने आपको बहुत डिटेल 3 पार्ट्स में जो है आई एक्सप्लेन द टॉपिक टू यू सो लेट्स स्टार्ट नाउ अंडरस्टैंडिंग रिफॉर्मेशन सो इस वीडियो लेक्चर में हमने क्या कहना है क्या करना है हमने देखो पहले तो आई विल बी टेलिंग यू व्हाट इज रिफॉर्मेशन राइट नंबर 2 कि ये रिफॉर्मेशन जो मूवमेंट शुरू हुई इसके कॉजेज क्या थे एंड नंबर 3 विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट द स्प्रेड ऑफ रिफॉर्मेशन सो लेट्स स्टार्ट अब देखो जैसे हम इसको रिफॉर्मेशन को समझते हैं थोड़ा सा आपको जो है बैकग्राउंड अगर मैं लेके जाऊं सो बाय 10th सेंचुरी द रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च जो है दैट हैड बिकम वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन यूरोप नाउ नॉर्थ एंड वेस्टर्न यूरोप में रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च वाज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन फैक्ट इट डोमिनेटेड देयर रिलीजियस लाइफ लेकिन ऐसा नहीं कि पीपल वर हैप्पी एंड एवरीबडी वाज एक्सेप्टिंग व्हाट चर्च वाज सेइंग चर्च को जो है पीपल वर ट्राइंग टू क्रिटिसाइज इट्स प्रैक्टिसेस हालांकि बच्चे चर्च ने रिफॉर्म्स भी बना किए ड्यूरिंग द मिडल एजेस लेकिन पीपल कॉन्टिन्यूड टू क्रिटिसाइज इट so then what is reformation that is what we want to know so reformation क्या है बच्चे एक religious movement है which was started in the 16th century and what was the aim of this movement to remove the evils of the Catholic Church right so this is about reformation is nothing but a religious movement जिसकी शुरुआत जो है 16th century में हुई थी and its main aim was to remove the evils of the Catholic Church देखो जब भी हम रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च की बात करते हैं देयर आर सर्टेन थिंग्स दैट यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड वन दैट रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च वाज अ medieval institution and it had become an institution over these years and because बच्चे it claimed Jesus Christ as its founder so कहीं ना कहीं that authority that sanctity came to be very much respected by the people दूसरा बच्चे सेकंड पॉइंट ये है कि Pope had become very powerful in a sense that nothing could control him. Pope जो है he expected everyone to be obedient to his authority, right? And ये जो obedience to his authority है ना केवल लोगों से था बल्कि even from the state or the king. Any kind of criticism that was done against him was considered to be absolutely unreligious. Kings of Europe भी है ना बच्चे they tried to defy the orders of the church या they tried to stop the interference of church in the matters exclusively coming under the state jurisdiction. Now we see that Roman Catholic Church जो है it was very powerful, it had its authority and sanctity. Pope, was absolutely infallible. He was absolutely powerful. No criticism was allowed against the church or the Pope. And even the kings of Europe could not defy or disobey the orders of the Pope, right? So if I say that church was very important, Pope was very important. Now the question comes that if we take into account Reformation as a movement which was to remove the evils of Catholic Church और ये church भी इतना important है, Pope भी important है, then my question is, then how was it that church came to be discredited in the 16th century? Right? So let's move on to the causes of Reformation. वैसे तो बच्चे ये मैंने 7 causes लिखे हैं लेकिन आपके बुक में इन्हीं causes में से बड़े कुछ और causes भी बनाए होंगे. Just understand the basic and depending on what from which book you are making your notes, you can always kind of add more points or maybe kind of rename the headings of these points. But this is a general understanding of the causes of Reformation. So पहला बच्चे decline of the papacy, then number 2 state versus church, number 3 the rise of nation states, number 4 rise of secular attitude, number 5 anti-church movements, अटैक बाय द ह्यूमनिस्ट स्कॉलर्स एंड द सेल ऑफ इंडल्जेंसेस। मैंने आपको अक्सर कहा है बच्चे, बिकॉज हिस्ट्री को याद करना बड़ा मुश्किल माना जाता है, बट बिलीव मी इट इज़ नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट। वॉट यू हैव टू डू इज़ कि जो भी आप क्वेश्चन कर रहे हो उसके, अगर सपोज आप कॉजेज़ ऑफ रिफॉर्मेशन कर रहे हो, उसके कॉजेज़ जो हैं आप सिर्फ आप उसको याद करो। द रेस्ट, understand the chapter and you can very well write in your own words. You do not need to mug up any long answers like that. Just learn the points, the basic points why the Reformation was caused, and the rest you can write depending on your understanding. So let's start with that. Number one is the decline of papacy. Now during the medieval ages, because church bada important tha, so church to hai bache, it owned a lot of land and property, and lot of taxes were taken by the church. So church के पास जो है medieval time में बहुत सारी wealth थी, it owned land and property, and one such example of the tax is the tenth, 1/10 of the income that was given to the church. Now आप इस सिचुएशन में देखो, पोप जो है he lived absolutely a luxurious life, right? And he did not conform to the basic ethics जैसे celibacy, chastity, अच्छा conduct. So he did not conform to all these things. So कुछ एक तो ये था बच्चे कि कहीं ना कहीं पोप का जो आप कह सकते हो उनका कैरेक्टर जो है, because he lived in luxury, he did not confine to the ethics. Church had this vast wealth and they owned land and property. So this was one reason why there was a decline in the papacy. Number two बच्चे, इस टाइम पे हम ये भी कहते हैं कि French influence on the Pope was quite bit. It was when the French king forced Pope Clement V to leave his headquarters at Rome in 1309, and he began to stay in Avignon. Now this is also called as a great schism भी कहते हैं इसको, and यहाँ पर क्या हुआ बच्चे, now दो पोप जो है वो अपॉइंट होने लग गए, वन इन रोम एंड अदर इन एविग्नॉन इन फ्रांस. एंड टू एड टू दिस कंफ्यूजन, नाउ अ थर्ड पोप began to be elected in 1409. Now this great schism जो है, it did end in 1417, but it had already caused a lot of damage to the papacy, and this could not be repaired, right? Number 2 point, state versus church. अब आप ये देखो, the rulers of Europe, they were absolutely envious of church because church had the power, the wealth, land, right? Then आप ये देखो, the church could not be taxed. The wealth of the church could not be taxed. Church had its own courts where they would punish people. जो लोग जो हैं religious offenses के लिए guilty थे, they frequently interfered in the matters of the state. They did not like any kind of criticisms. So under this circumstance, Reformation also became one of the impact of this, because the rulers of Europe, they did not like the power of the growing power of the church. Right? Then number 3 is the rise of nation states. इस टाइम पे बच्चे बड़े पावरफुल नेशन स्टेट्स आ गए थे, जैसे इंग्लैंड, फ्रांस, स्पेन, एंड पहली बार चर्च जो है, इट हैड टू मीट द चैलेंज ऑफ देयर रूलर्स. नाउ ये जो आपके स्टेट्स के रूलर्स हैं, इंग्लैंड, फ्रांस एंड स्पेन, दे डिड नॉट लाइक द सुप्रीमेसी ऑफ द चर्च, एंड दे फेल्ट दैट ये जो आपकी चर्च की सुप्रीमेसी है, दैट इज़ अ ग्रेट हिंड्रेंस टू द well-being of their state. और उन्होंने बच्चे कुछ साल जो है, there was a struggle between the state versus church. So यहाँ पर कुछ powers जो हैं, these rulers were successful in taking away from the church. कौन सी देखो, number 1, nominating the church officials. Number 2, limiting the jurisdiction or power of the church courts. Then controlling the enforcement of the church decrees and levying taxes on the church property. So these people, they were trying to control the power of the church, right? Then is rise of, oops, I'm so sorry बेटे, rise of secular attitude. देखो ये rise of secular attitude जो है ये थोड़ा सा रिनेसां से भी आया, because रिनेसां ने कहीं ना कहीं उनमें how to be logical, that idea, how not to accept things on their face value but to question them, to kind of test them in terms of logic. So ये जो attitude है that also helped in the rise of the secular attitude. दूसरा बच्चे obviously secular attitude एक और चीज़ से आया, expanding commerce and growth of cities. Now people believed that there is nothing wrong in acquiring wealth. अगर world आपको opportunities दे रहा है, so what is wrong with that? And unfortunately, बच्चे यहाँ भी church was to be blamed, because church had lowered its image by accumulating wealth. And during this time, because we talked about Renaissance, there was the growing trade and commerce. There were these merchant traders who were becoming rich because of the development of trade and commerce. So they felt that there is nothing wrong in acquiring wealth, right? So कहीं ना कहीं बच्चे ये secular attitude जो है that also paved the way for the Reformation. Especially peasants जो हैं, they looked upon the church taxes with lot of contempt. They believed that अगर हम church को reform कर पाएंगे तो we will be able to acquire some of the lands of church which can be used by these peasants. So this also became one of the causes for the Reformation. Then is the anti-church movements. देखो ऐसा नहीं बच्चे कि Reformation was the first movement to reform the Roman Catholic Church. इससे पहले भी movements were going on, like your Albizien and Waldenses in France. They attacked the church sacraments and priesthood. Then in England you have John Wycliffe. He was a priest, a professor. He declared कि हम पोप या चर्च को क्यों इतना इंपॉर्टेंट कर रहे हैं. ही सेड लेट बाइबल बी द सोल गाइड टू मेन्स स्पिरिचुअल थॉट एंड कंडक्ट. एंड इनके फॉलोअर्स वर कॉल्ड एज लोलाड्स. दिस इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड दे बिकेम वेरी इन्फ्लुएंशियल. Then is your John Huss. He was a Bohemian priest, a professor. He also condemned church for its corruption, but he was burnt in 1450. There was also your Savonarola. He established corrupt-free rule in Florence, and he also attacked the corruption of the church. Right? So ऐसा नहीं बचे, Reformation से पहले भी there were people who were trying to speak against the abuses or the corruption in the church. Example is John Wycliffe or John Huss जो है, they were talking about it, but eventually it was this movement, when it took a proper form, that church was finally reformed. Right? Then is attack by the humanist scholars. Now the growth of humanist movement also gave discredit to church. Now humanist movement बच्चे हमने Renaissance में इसको बहुत डिटेल में किया था. Because humanist movement मैंने आपको उस टाइम में कहा था कि basically it just meant that humans have power too, and human की fate जो है that cannot be just decided by the God. Human himself can decide its fate, his or her fate. So ये जो आपका एक humanism की बात है, और हमने बात किया था Petrarch. He was an Italian writer and he became the father of the humanist movement. So this also gave much discredit to the church. Right? Then there was a humanist scholar, Ruchel. He pointed out that there are a lot of problems in terms of interpretation of the Bible. So आप देखोगे बच्चे Reformation का एक सबसे बड़ा impact कुछ Renaissance से भी हम ले सकते हैं, because Renaissance में printing press आई. Printing press में सबसे पहली चीज़ जो print हुई, that was Bible. So when Bible was printed in various languages, it was being translated in various languages. So obviously people could understand that what church or the Pope are saying and what Bible is talking about the religion. And most important is your Erasmus. इसकी book आप याद करो, In the Praise of Folly. He condemns the corruption and behavior of the monks and the priest, right? Then the last one and the most important is the sale of indulgences. Now this was really, really interesting thing. Now regardless of whatever criticism was being leveled against the church, now church through its agents. They were trying to build up the Basilica of St. Peter's Church, and the way they would collect money was absolutely questionable. That how are they doing this? Like in Germany, there was this agent by the name of John Tenzel. So ये लोग क्या करते थे, ये indulgences की सेल करते थे, and that actually provoked Martin Luther to revolt in 1517. Now what was this sale of indulgences? बेसिकली बच्चे इनको हम हिंदी में खिमा पत्तर भी कह सकते हैं, कि अगर किसी व्यक्ति ने कोई सिंस किए हैं तो उसके जो है रिड्रेसल के लिए, उसके माफ़ी के लिए जो है आप ये चिट्ठियाँ खरीद सकते हो, एंड खरीदने के लिए ऑब्वियसली आप पैसे दोगे. सो दिस सेल ऑफ इंडल्जेंसेस बिकेम द इमीडिएट कॉज फॉर द रिफॉर्मेशन, एंड इट वाज मार्टिन लूथर हु स्टार्टेड द रिवोल्ट इन 1517. Right, so this is it. हमारा causes हो गया. Let's just go back to causes once again. Right, so we started from here. Now Reformation was a religious movement. It was started in the 16th century, and main aim was to remove the evils of the Catholic Church. देखो बच्चे, church, as I told you, was a very strong medieval institution, sanctity and authority because Jesus Christ was its founder, so people respected. Pope had all the power. No criticism was allowed against the Pope. The kings of Europe also could not disobey the Pope. So इस time पे then the question is कि ये Reformation movement शुरू कहाँ से हुई? ऐसा क्या हुआ कि church began to be discredited? उसके हमने ये 7 reasons किए: decline of the Papacy, state versus church, rise of nation states, rise of secular attitude, anti-church movement, attack by the humanist scholars, and the sale of indulgences. Right, now iske baad bache, let's move on to its spread and development. But before that, let me just kind of think that what all causes can also be made out of these points. देखो जैसे there are lots of points that you can make out of these points, like the corrupt way of living of these priests, then the great power of the church, then the wealth of the church. मैंने आपको बच्चे शुरू में कहा था कि पोप जो है used to hold his religious courts. So one cause for reformation also could be that dissatisfaction from the religious courts. Other factors which led to Reformation could be Renaissance as well, and then could be these Catholic reformers, as I told you about. And one of the reason also could be the desire of the rulers. हमने किया ये देखो कहीं ना कहीं kings also wanted their power back, so they could only get their power back if there is a reformation or the church is reformed, right? So this is the causes, that other points that you can read in your book, so that can be very easily mentioned. So let's talk about the spread or its development. देखो सबसे पहले बच्चे उसमें आता है मार्टिन लूथर, राइट? सो ये जो पिक्चर आप यहाँ देख पा रहे हो, ये मैं आगे आपको बताऊंगी भी. जो मैंने आपको सेल ऑफ इंडल्जेंसेस की बात की थी, तो सेल ऑफ इंडल्जेंसेस के अगेंस्ट जो है मार्टिन लूथर बहुत ज़्यादा खफा हुए, और उन्होंने जो है चर्च के जो डोर के आगे अपने 95 थीसिस और 95 क्रिटिसिज्म जो है वो चर्च के लिए जो उन्होंने लिखे थे, उनको उन्होंने डोर के ऊपर जो है लगा दिया. ऑल्दो ही वाज कॉल्ड बाय द डाइट ऑफ कांग्रेस. सो इस सबको डिटेल में लेट्स टॉक अबाउट दैट. सो we'll talk about the spread of Reformation in Germany, and in that we'll talk about the special role played by the Martin Luther. Now Martin Luther बच्चे अगर देखा जाए, so he belonged to a very well-to-do peasant family, and कहते हैं कि उनके father, he wanted that Martin Luther should be a lawyer, but instead of a lawyer he became a monk. राइट, लेकिन बच्चे जैसे जब से वो मॉन्क बने थे, उनका एक ही मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ थी, दैट ही वॉज मोर कंसर्न विद द अटेनमेंट ऑफ सैल्वेशन. एंड इसमें बच्चे ही वॉज एब्सोल्युटली क्लियर दैट गॉड अलोन कुड हेल्प अ मैन टू अटेन सैल्वेशन. सो ही विजिटेड रोम इन 1511, एंड व्हेन ही सॉ द करप्शन इन द चर्च, ही वॉज एब्सोल्युटली bewildered, shocked. And most important was when he saw John Tenzel, his scandalous sale of indulgences, that actually his anger just burst out, right? Okay. Now, Tenzel claimed that those who brought the indulgences, right, that is what he said, na, कि ये खिमा पत्थर जो है आपके या ये that they got an automatic remission of their sins by the God. That if you buy these indulgences, तो आपको भगवान जो है आपके sin से आपको automatically remit करेंगे. Now, Martin Luther जो है, by this time he had become a professor in the newly started university at Wittenberg, and he could not, actually understand this concept of sale of indulgences. So he wrote against this. उन्होंने अपनी 95 thesis जो है लिखने के बाद, that is 95 points of criticism against the church, उन्होंने जो है विटनबर्ग के कैसल चर्च के डोर के बाहर जो है उनको लगा दिया. अब जब ऐसा किया, obviously बच्चे, it roused a lot of criticism from the church, but एंड ही वॉज इवन आस्क्ड कि आपका जो ये व्यू पॉइंट है इसको आप वापस लो, बिकॉज हिज व्यूज वर नाउ दे हैड स्टार्टेड इम्पैक्टिंग द पीपल. बट मार्टिन लूथर, ही रिमेन्ड फर्म बिकॉज ही न्यू दैट वॉट एवर ही इज डूइंग इज नॉट राइट, इज नॉट रॉन्ग, राइट. So Luther जो है, he also wrote letters to the Pope to convince him. In fact, अब यहाँ पर कुछ लोगों का ये मानना है कि maybe when he's talking about the Reformation, he's against Bible, he's against God. You have to understand, he wasn't against Bible. In fact, he said that let Bible be your guide. What he was against was the undue power which was given to Pope, and what kind of corruption was there in the church in terms of the sale of indulgences. तो उन्होंने यही कहा कि every individual जो है, they have the right to seek their own salvation without the assistance of church. And किसकी assistance लेनी है? Only the Holy Bible. So जब इतना सब कुछ हुआ, obviously ये सब चुप बैठने वाले तो नहीं थे, तो इनको जो है एक पार्लियामेंट जो है, डाइट ऑफ वॉर्म्स, उसमें इनको बुलाया गया, ठीक है. और हालांकि बच्चे, इनके फ्रेंड जो है फेडरिक द वाइज जो है, उन्होंने उनसे कहा भी कि आप इस पार्लियामेंट में जो है ना जाएं, बट लूथर एक्चुअली थॉट दैट इट विल बी द राइट मोमेंट टू tell the church about his reforms. So in 1521, Emperor Charles V summoned Luther to the Diet of Worms to answer जो भी पोप ने उनके खिलाफ जो है चार्जेस लेवल किए हैं. Now, as I told you बच्चे, बहुत सारे फ्रेंड्स ने कहा कि आपने नहीं जाना वहाँ पर, but he was willing. He's like, मैं जाऊँगा और मैं अपनी पॉइंट्स जो है वहाँ पर सबके सामने रख कर आऊँगा. So जैसे बच्चे, he started speaking. Now obviously the church had so much of power that, at that moment जो है, the diet said that this man must be arrested right now. लेकिन वहाँ पर जो है लूथर के प्रोटेक्टर जो है फेडरिक द वाइज, he saved his life by forcing him to hide. So he was just taken away and he said कि आप जो है थोड़ी देर छुप जाओ till everything goes on fine. तो कहते हैं कि हियर ही हिड देयर इन अ लोनली कैसल फॉर अबाउट अ ईयर. लेकिन यहाँ उन्होंने बहुत ख़ास चीज़ की कि उन्होंने बाइबल को जो है जर्मन लैंग्वेज में ट्रांसलेट किया. लेकिन बच्चे, वहाँ पर जाने से पहले जो है उन्होंने जर्मन प्राइसेस नहीं बच्चे, प्रिंसेस, आई थिंक एन इज़ मिसिंग. सो ही एक्चुअली अर्ज द जर्मन प्रिंसेस to defy the authority of the Roman Catholic Church through the churches of their respective states. So उन्होंने बेसिकली बच्चे वहाँ के जो रूलर्स हैं उनसे ये कहा कि आप जो है रोमन कैथोलिक चर्च की पावर को डिसओबे करो, उनकी अथॉरिटी को. सो और आई थिंक उसका जो है इम्पैक्ट इतना ज़्यादा हुआ कि दीज प्रिंस जो है ऑफ द नॉर्थ लॉस्ट नो टाइम इन रेजिंग द बैनर ऑफ रिवोल्ट अगेंस्ट द कैथोलिक चर्च. In fact, they also formed a league to protect Luther. Now, Luther के जो followers हैं, they also claim themselves as the Lutheranism, right? Just like in India, you have the sect like Vaishnavism or the other sect. So here also, the people who actually believed in the teachings or the sayings of Martin Luther, they formed themselves in a Lutheranism sect. So Lutheran churches were established everywhere, and all the Lutheran states and towns in Germany, they joined the protest movement against the emperor. Now यहाँ पर बहुत सारी obstacles आई. Obviously there was lot of people who were trying to suppress his ideology, but he was able to spread his convictions through the support of the North and Central Germany, and also with the support of the middle class. नाउ ऑब्वियसली एक जो बच्चे इसका नेगेटिव पॉइंट ये हुआ, हम लोग इम्पैक्ट में भी इसको डिस्कस करेंगे कि इसका इम्पैक्ट ये हुआ कि दिस केम इन द फॉर्म ऑफ a conflict which divided Germany into two parts. One was the Catholic Germany, which was led by the Emperor Charles V. Another was the Protestant Germany, which was being led by Martin Luther and his followers. And finally, this conflict ended in the Peace of Augsburg in 1555. And this peace finally acknowledged the right of the ruler to determine the state religion. इसमें कुछ और points जो है we will discuss. So in a way they tried to kind of have peace in Germany where the Germany got the approval for two religion, and जो states थी बच्चे, they neither worship Catholic nor Protestant, they were not included in this peace. राइट एक और चीज़ मार्टिन लूथर के साथ जो जुड़ी हुई है, दैट इज़ द रिवोल्ट ऑफ द फार्मर्स. ये आपके बुक में ज़रूर लिखी होती है. Actually बच्चे, this was basically the farmers also revolted against the Pope, church and rulers because of the heavy taxes. So यहाँ पर Luther tried to take help of these farmers in terms of the Reformation, and these peasants had put forth about 12 demands. Some of their demand was to end the slavery, or the control of the elite class over the cattle grazing lands must be abolished, right? But यहाँ पर बच्चे मार्टिन लूथर को ऐसा लगा कि अगर वो इस प्रोटेस्ट का पार्ट बनते हैं, it may not deviate, it may not hamper the development of his own Reformation movement. So that is why he stopped lending any support to the rebellious people. But of course, bache, the Reformation had taken its root in Germany. Right now, the other person that we will be talking about is Ulrich Zwingli of Switzerland. क्योंकि बच्चे, जब भी हम स्प्रेड ऑफ रिफॉर्मेशन की बात करते हैं, सो दीज आर द पीपल. नाउ स्प्रेड में बच्चे सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट बात क्या है? बेसिकली रेनेसां का जो टाइम पीरियड था, राइट, और इसमें प्रिंटिंग प्रेस का बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट रोल है. सो जो भी ये लिख रहे हैं, उसको लिखने के माध्यम से भी लोग जो हैं, दे आर बिकमिंग अवेयर. सो दिस Reformation, which just started in Germany, had its spread in other parts of Europe as well, right? Now, so Luther's Protestant movement now spread beyond the Germans border, right? और यहाँ पर बहुत सारे intellectuals were influenced. One of them was a young priest in Switzerland by the name Ulrich Zwingli. So he became the leader of the protest movement, and he organized a new church in the Swiss city of Zurich. Now, क्योंकि बच्चे ऐसी चीज़ें जो है, ऐसी views जो हैं, just like in Germany, here again there was a war between the Catholics and the Protestants, in which he was killed. So his role in Reformation in Switzerland might not be that long, but of course he's absolutely an important person when it comes to the introduction of the Reformation system in movement in Switzerland. And years later, it was the French reformer John Calvin who took over the Swiss Reformation. So this is John Calvin, and after the death of Ulrich Zwingli, he took over the Reformation in Switzerland. Now, ये खुद बचे because he was forced to flee because of the religious prosecutions. I told you कि जब ये Reformation हुआ तो countries जो हैं वो दो पार्ट में डिवाइड हो गए. एक Catholics जो old religion को follow करते हैं, और एक Protestant, right? So कहीं ना कहीं because of that reason he had to settle in Geneva, and it was in Geneva that his religious teachings took deep root and spread to the neighboring Swiss cantons. He also had his own church, the Calvinist church, which enforced strict moral values on its citizen. Now, उनका बच्चे जो doctrine है, that is most important, is the doctrine of predestination, which he talked about in his book, The Institutes of the Christian religion. Now, what does that doctrine says? It says that the God chooses his own elect and they live in total rightness in this world and enjoy salvation. So Geneva now became the center of the Reformation, जहाँ पर जॉन कैल्विन के साथ जुड़ा हुआ जो कैल्विनिस्ट डॉक्ट्राइन है, that spread through the graduates of the University of Geneva. And from Switzerland, it was followed by the Presbyterian Church in Scotland, which was organized by John Knox. Then Dutch Reformed Church in Holland, Huguenot Church in France. So this was all the Reformation that was taking place. Now, John Wycliffe is an important name when we talk about the Reformation in England. Now, England में ना बच्चे, just hold on. All right, I'm so sorry. My slide just got kind of not saved, right? So done that. हाँ जी, अब आता है बच्चे John Wycliffe, and he was the most important reformer when it comes to England. लेकिन England में ना बच्चे जैसे बाकी Reformation की गई कुछ ऐसा नहीं हुआ, because यहाँ something unique था. What happened in okay, just hold on. Right. It was King Henry VIII. Actually, he was married to the Catherine of Aragon, and maybe he wanted to have divorce with his wife, and that became the cause of the break with the Catholic Church at Rome. Now, यहाँ पर क्या था बच्चे? As I told you, that rulers, they could not disobey the Pope, so he actually asked Pope to grant him the permission to divorce his first wife. A Pope जो है, he did not do that. What was the reason? Because Catherine was the aunt of Pope's closest ally, Emperor Charles V. So he did not allow King Henry VIII to divorce his wife. Now, अब इसकी थोड़ी बच्चे impatience इसलिए भी था because the English king, now he wanted to marry his mistress Anne Boleyn. Now he was disappointed that Pope has refused, so Henry VIII, now he wore the mantle of the leadership of the Reformation movement in England. Now what did he do? Number one, he got the Act of Supremacy passed. ये कहाँ किया? He got the English Parliament के Pope की power जो है over the churches in the England, he actually annulled them. So इस act के बाद जो है Henry VIII, or the King of England, he became the protector and the only supreme head of the church and the clergy of England. And after becoming the head of the Anglican church, he confiscated the properties of monasteries and churches. Now, he also made sure that the English translation of Bible is found in every church so that people could actually understand, that what is written in the Bible and what is being taught to them by these pope or bishops or other clergy, right? So that is what he did. So in England, it was King Henry VIII who actually wore the mantle of leadership of Reformation. Chahe that was, a part that he was not allowed to divorce his first wife, the Catherine of Aragon, and marry his mistress Anne Boleyn. But whatever he did, he got the Act of Supremacy passed. He confiscated the property of monasteries and churches, and that is how he led the banner of Reformation, right? Now, after the Henry VIII, it was Edward the Sixth. Again, he talked about the Protestant doctrines. But in England, this was the time, that is 1553 to 58, that the staunch Catholic queen, that is Queen Mary, sometimes also known as Bloody Mary, when she became the queen, she actually prosecuted the Protestants, for which बच्चे उसको Bloody Mary के नाम से भी कहा गया है, but actually she just kind of killed the Protestants because she absolutely favored the Catholic Church. Now, after this is your Queen Elizabeth. Now, she assumed the title of Supreme Governor, and then she followed a middle path by avoiding extremes and thereby gave a new direction to the Anglican Church. So this is all that we have done in the Reformation. I think things should be clearer now. And especially बच्चे जब भी हम Reformation की spread की बात करते हैं तब मार्टिन लूथर जो है that is very very important. Zwingli जो है that is very very important. And then we have we have this John Calvin, then we have John Wycliffe. So, all these people, whenever you are asked a question on the spread or the development of the Reformation, in sabka naam jo hai, definitely you will write it down. So, this is all I have for you in terms of Reformation. I still will be having my next video on the impact of the Reformation because sometimes questions are also asked on that. So thank you so much for watching my video, and in case you want to have a video on whatever topic that you like, please write me in the comments and very soon I can make that a video for you for your better understanding. Thank you so much and have a great day today.